Have you ever heard of a city so perfectly planned it left the first European visitors speechless? A kingdom so wealthy and organized it shattered every preconceived notion they held? Today, we're not talking about ancient Rome or Greece. We're journeying to West Africa, to the heart of the powerful and sophisticated Benin Kingdom. For centuries, the dominant narrative about Africa was one of a dark continent, a land without history, without structure, without civilization. But when the first Portuguese explorers arrived in the Kingdom of Benin in the late 15th century, the reality they encountered was so astounding, it directly contradicted everything they thought they knew. What they found wasn't a scattered collection of huts. They found a massive, thriving metropolis. The capital, Benin City, in present-day Edo State, was a marvel of urban planning. It was protected by a series of gigantic earthen walls and moats, a defensive system later described by the Guinness Book of Records as the world's largest earthwork prior to the mechanical era. Some estimates suggest it was 4 times longer than the Great Wall of China. Inside these walls was a city laid out in a meticulous grid, a wide, straight central avenue, many times broader than the main street of any European city at the time, ran through the heart of the capital. From this main road, other streets branched off at perfect right angles, leading to residential compounds and artisanal quarters. A Dutch visitor in the 1600s, Olfert Dapper, described the city as being on par with the finest cities in Europe. He wrote that the houses were neat and well kept, and the king's palace was a sprawling complex of buildings with wooden pillars covered in bronze plaques depicting historical events. This brings us to their technology, particularly their mastery of metallurgy. The artisans of Benin were unparalleled in their skill with bronze, brass, and ivory. The famous Benin Bronzes are not just beautiful works of art, they are historical records, a library cast in metal. They depict kings, queen mothers, court life, military victories, and even interactions with the Portuguese. The level of detail and the sophistication of the lost wax casting technique used was so advanced that when these artifacts were later looted by the British in 1897 and brought to Europe, many refused to believe they were of African origin. They wrongly assumed such craftsmanship must have been taught by Europeans, a clear example of the biased lens through which African achievements were viewed. But the kingdom's sophistication wasn't just in its architecture or art. It had a highly complex and stable political structure. At the top was the Oba, a divine king who held immense spiritual and political authority. But he didn't rule alone. He was supported by a complex hierarchy of chiefs, title holders, and palace officials who managed everything from trade and taxation to military affairs and justice. There were also powerful guilds, associations of craftsmen like the bronze casters, ivory carvers, and blacksmiths, who held significant influence in the kingdom's economy and politics. This system of checks and balances ensured stability and efficient governance for centuries. So, why is this story so important today? Because it powerfully debunks the false narratives that were used to justify colonialism. The idea that Europeans were bringing civilization to Africa is completely dismantled when you look at the reality of the Benin Kingdom. Here was a society that had already achieved a high level of political organization, urban development, and technological prowess long before extensive European contact. They had a thriving economy based on trade in goods like palm oil, ivory, and pepper. And they engaged with the Portuguese and other Europeans not as inferiors but as equals, as sophisticated trading partners. The shock expressed by those early European visitors is a testament to the kingdom's greatness. They found a society that was clean, well-ordered, and governed by a complex legal and political system. Dutch accounts even mention that theft was punishable by death, resulting in a city so safe you could leave your goods unattended without fear. Compare that to the often chaotic and unsanitary cities of 15th and 16th century Europe. The contrast is stark. So, what can modern Africans and the world learn from the Benin Kingdom? First, it's a powerful lesson in self-belief and heritage. It reminds us of a history of incredible innovation, organization, and strength that exists within the continent. The planning of Benin City shows us the power of indigenous knowledge systems in creating sustainable and functional communities. They didn't need outside blueprints to build one of the most impressive cities of their time. Second, the structure of their society, with its guilds and councils, highlights the importance of inclusive governance and community participation. The craft guilds weren't just economic units. They were pillars of the community, preserving knowledge and ensuring quality. This is a model for empowering local industries and expertise today. Finally, the story of Benin is a call to reclaim our history and tell our own stories. For too long, the narrative has been controlled by others. By studying and celebrating kingdoms like Benin, we fill in the knowledge gaps and correct the misinformation that has persisted for centuries. We honor the ingenuity of our ancestors and inspire future generations to build upon that legacy. The Benin Kingdom wasn't an anomaly. It was one of many great civilizations that flourished across Africa, each with its own unique contributions to human history. Their stories are a vital part of the global human story, and it's time they were given the recognition they deserve. The stones and bronzes of Benin don't just tell a story of the past, they provide a blueprint for a proud and prosperous future. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. If you found this as fascinating as I did, please hit that like button, subscribe for more dives into incredible histories, and share this video to help spread the real story of Africa's past. See you in the next one.